Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and we have just heard even more about this apparent Nintendo Direct happening in February that will have multiple anniversary-related announcements. Now, I talked about this initial rumor in yesterday's video, and in that video, I talked about the credibility of the source. It's actually pretty good. The source is coming from Nintentalk, a fellow YouTuber and friend of the channel. What he heard from his source is this: expect a Nintendo Direct in February with some anniversary announcements in the show. And so in yesterday's video, I talked about various possibilities, but for the most part, what seems most realistic, at least in terms of first-party stuff, would be for The Legend of Zelda, and maybe some Mario 40th anniversary stuff could trickle over. Things like the Pokemon 30th anniversary would be saved for a Pokemon Presents. We already got some Animal Crossing stuff. Maybe there's a Metroid announcement at some point this year, but Nintendo doesn't really celebrate other anniversaries in their directs outside of Zelda and Mario. But in terms of third-party stuff, I kind of glossed it over because there are so many possibilities. One has come to mind that makes a lot of sense, and then we'll be getting into what we're hearing from other sources about this Direct and maybe some anniversaries. So, what makes a lot of sense to show up in this Direct is Resident Evil. We are getting Resident Evil 9 Requiem, 8, and 7 on Nintendo Switch 2 next month, where we're supposedly getting this Nintendo Direct. And it's Resident Evil's 30th anniversary this March, and Capcom has been hard pushing Resident Evil all throughout the year with so many different announcements and collaborations and concerts and, yeah, games. And so while we may just get an update on what's already been announced during the Direct regarding Resident Evil, it's also completely within the realm of possibility that Capcom may announce more Resident Evil games coming to Switch 1 and Switch 2. There are still some left out, so it does make sense to make those announcements, I would say. So that may tie into some of the anniversary stuff we could see in this Direct. But let's now get into what we're hearing from others. So another friend of the channel, Attack the Backlog, who's also a fellow YouTuber, who also has shown to have a pretty strong track record in terms of his sources. He's gone various Nintendo Direct dates correct, hasn't gotten anything wrong as far as I'm aware, and even teased the announcement for The Adventures of Elliot, is actually corroborating some pretty big information that has come out from the latest Nashville Partida Zero, which we'll be getting to in a moment here, but this is what Attack the Backlog had to say. I can now say, Nashville and I spoke about this behind the scenes, and I was able to corroborate his statement of Kingdom Hearts Integrum coming to Switch 2 with my own source who told me it is coming to Switch 2 indeed. So, yeah, Attack the Backlog is corroborating this information of a Kingdom Hearts collection native for Nintendo Switch 2. That's a pretty big announcement, and perhaps it's related to anniversary stuff. I'll say that technically, this would be Kingdom Hearts' 24th anniversary, which is not really something that you would celebrate. You celebrate these things in the 5-year intervals, right? The 20th anniversary was in 2022, this is 2026. Now, it's possible that maybe this is tying into the recent anniversary for Kingdom Hearts 2 last month in December, but to make an announcement for an entire collection in February, that doesn't really seem to fit either. I will acknowledge that when it comes to these different anniversary celebrations from different game companies, there's certainly some wiggle room in terms of when they actually celebrate the anniversary in comparison to when it actually happens, because you gotta wait until the product is complete and ready to go. Perhaps you want to think about when it makes sense to put out something based off just their fiscal year and just, business strategies. So there's some wiggle room there, but still, this would be weird to put out there as an anniversary celebration this year. But as just simply a really good collection on Switch 2, it makes tons of sense, and I'm sure this is going to be huge for a lot of people. Attack the Backlog was actually corroborating this info from Nash Weedle. This Kingdom Hearts stuff came out during his latest Partida Zero, which released earlier today. And we've heard some other interesting things in this video. But before diving into it, let me point out that I have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers. So if you find yourself enjoying my videos and you haven't subscribed already, I would very much appreciate your subscription. Now, in this latest episode of Partida Zero, yes, Nash Riddle broke the news of the Kingdom Hearts collection, which was corroborated by Attack the Backlog, as we just discussed, but there's actually a lot more here. So, various third-party games are brought up, and while I think most, if not all of these, have been leaked before by Nash Riddle, it's suggested that they're all going to be getting announced in this year of 2026. Silent Hill 2 Remake, Max Payne Remake, Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor, Bradley the Badger, Sea of Thieves, Lies of P, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. All these are suggested to be getting announced for Switch 2 this year, which would be a variety of some pretty significant third-party games. But there is also a great deal of conversation on first-party offerings in this latest episode. So, Nash Riddle says that he has heard that this is meant to be a transition year for Nintendo, where we will still be getting Switch 1 games, which I don't think is really too surprising. There should be more Switch 1 games announced, perhaps not as much as last year, but there should still be some. They should still be supporting the platform. A lot of people still own a Switch 1. But this point is used, and this is where I have some thoughts I want to get into in a moment here, but this point is used to temper expectations somewhat here. Not fully, because Nash Riddle also says that Nintendo has a lot of developers, they could have something to surprise us. Most of these people who get inside information are just going to hear a piece, or in some cases pieces to the puzzle, but not the full picture. So I don't think we should take this information and just 100% assume that we know everything Nintendo has to offer in this year. Still though, Nash is kind of in the middle here in terms of tempering expectations, suggesting that there could be some surprises, but maybe not expect the biggest, best year from Nintendo ever either. Which I will say, in my opinion, I don't think they have to have the best year ever, but I also think they do need to bring the goods. This is the beginning of the Switch 2 generation. 2026 will be the first full year of Switch 2, and the holidays, while it's actually not as bad as some people are making it out to be, the Switch 2 is still pacing to becoming the best-selling console of all time by the end of the fiscal year, hitting their target of 19 million, which is really, really good. They still have lost some momentum, and they need to fight back. They need to make sure they have a strong beginning to their generation. They have to have a strong lineup, and we are coming off of a pretty long generation in Switch 1, where 2024 was very slow. The first half of 2025 was very slow, very, very slow, even slower than 2024. As someone who generally praises Nintendo, because I'm a hardcore Nintendo fan, I would have to critique them in this case, because I do think they should be bringing the goods this year. But the goods this year doesn't have to be literally the next new 3D Mario and Ocarina of Time remake or bust. There are other options. But both Mario and Zelda are brought up by Nash Riddle. So let's talk about Mario first. He said he's heard some different rumors regarding the big new 3D Mario, and from a common sense perspective, he would think it makes sense for them to announce 3D Mario to come out this holiday. However, he also goes back to what he has heard about how this is supposed to be a year of transition, and that doesn't seem to align. So he's not entirely confident in terms of what's going to happen with 3D Mario for this year. But there is an interesting implication there, and that's that, from what he has heard, 3D Mario is far along. It may not be so far along that it comes out this year, but it wouldn't be that far off, which, of course, I'm sure many people are going to agree with, but there have been other people who have argued that it may be very far off because the Odyssey team worked on Donkey Kong Bonanza. However, as we've pointed out multiple times, not the entire team seems to have worked on Donkey Kong Bonanza. Also, Donkey Kong Bonanza alone doesn't make sense as the only game that the Odyssey team has been working on the last 8 years. And then on top of that, there's the whole history of 3D Mario being made available early on for every 3D console Nintendo has put out. So at least we're getting some implication that 3D Mario is far along. If it's announced this year, if it's shown off this year, that we're not hearing about. We don't know. But there is also conversation about The Legend of Zelda. And what Nash Riddle says here is this. As he has said before, there are going to be multiple Zelda announcements this year. And he emphasizes this part, there will be no new Zelda this year, implying that there will be Zelda releases this year, just not new ones. Now, the word new, I would say there's some flexibility there, because obviously that means we're not getting like a new open-air Zelda game, right? That's obvious. But an ambitious remake, say for one like Ocarina of Time, that we have theorized on and has also been rumored by Nash Weedle, how would you define that? Would you define that as new? Would you define that as old with a little bit of new? There's a little bit of flexibility there. Now, Nash Weedle has also said in the past, though, that from what he has heard of this remake project, he does not expect it to be ready until 2027 at the earliest. So he does not believe we're going to see this Zelda remake in 2026. But it's suggested there would be other Zelda stuff, and he actually does share something here that is rather surprising. He says there's going to be an announcement for a Zelda game known as the Ancient Stone Tablets. This is a Zelda game that's technically a direct sequel to A Link to the Past, but it was only made available through the Satellaview peripheral add-on for the Super Famicom. This was not made available in other regions, but basically it's a peripheral that allowed the Super Famicom to connect to satellites to download updates to games, radio shows, and other content like that. And so basically, the Ancient Stone Tablets was kind of like a DLC series for A Link to the Past. They came out in 4 different waves where they were only available to play for a particular period of time, like an hour. I don't know that much about this, I've never played this before, but that's my basic understanding of it. So this wouldn't be a big Zelda game, this would be a small, interesting release. It's considered lost media, so Nintendo repurposing it and making it available on NSO or something like that would be a big deal. And also, by the way, Nash Weedle does say that this wouldn't be the only Satellaview title, so Nintendo may simply be bringing over Satellaview games over to Nintendo Switch Online, which that would be a pretty big deal, I would say, to bring in a whole other selection of games, although they would be ones we haven't played before, which is actually really interesting. Now, maybe it's not a big deal in the sense of, oh, there's no big giant Zelda thing, but this isn't said to be the only Zelda thing, right? There is suggestion of more Zelda announcements this year. What those will be, there's still a lot of room for debate there. I go back to what we've heard from Nintendo Talk about the anniversary stuff. Zelda does make sense. I don't think they're just going to get by just announcing this Satellaview Ancient Stone Tablets DLC that very few people have played. That's a small little thing. There's gotta be more. Now, what will be that more? That's a whole other conversation. However, I will say a couple things here. Let's say we don't get a big Zelda remake this year. Let's say we don't get the 3D Mario this year. There are a couple things that would do a great job of filling the void. In this Partida Zero, it's brought up again that Monolith Soft has something. So Monolith Soft, a Nintendo developer who's responsible for the Xenoblade games, has done a lot of support work for Zelda and Splatoon and Animal Crossing. Supposedly they have an announcement coming up really soon, presumably in this Nintendo Direct, that's been rumored. So that could be big. And I've had some theories that it might even be somewhat Zelda related. Doesn't have to be. I think it would be exciting regardless, but we've already had those conversations. Now, another thing we've had a conversation about is Luigi's Mansion 4. We've heard that there's supposed to be a new Poltergust amiibo. Next several games is due for their next release. Luigi's Mansion 3 was their most successful game. It's kind of a no-brainer that they should be working on Luigi's Mansion 4. That could be another big release this year. So if we don't have 3D Mario, Luigi's Mansion 4 would still be a pretty big deal in terms of getting something from the Mario universe, and getting a Monolith Soft title, what they put out there is certainly appealing to a big part of the Zelda fan base. So as a big-time Zelda fan and Xenoblade fan, I definitely recommend whatever it is they're about to put out. But with this latest information, what are your opinions on this upcoming Direct? What kinds of anniversary-related announcements might there be? Will there be more Zelda stuff? Will there be something else? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.